to Road Gang Radio with Jimmy Mack, Lindsay Lawler.
Give me a minute, y'all. I'm coming.
And you, because if you're listening, you're in the gang. Take it away, founding member Phone Master Dre.
You are in the gang, and this is the Road Gang Radio, live from the Fast Sports Studios with your host, Jimmy Mack.
Thank you, by the way, Phone Master Dre. It is unacceptable to be going down the road with 6 wheels in a 20-wheeled vehicle.
Unacceptable.
Unacceptable. It's unacceptable, actually, to ask the state trooper to hold your Miller Genuine Draft while you light your blunt when you get pulled over. Unacceptable.
Unless he wants a hit.
Well, yeah, at that point, you might have a friend indeed. But a friend with weed is not a friend indeed, by the way. Stay away from that stuff. It doesn't matter how much you like it. It doesn't matter how legal it is in your state. It's like Elliot Ness said, you can have that first joint the moment they tell you that the rules have changed. Until then, you want to be a professional driver, you got to lay off that marry do you wanna. You got to marry don't you wanna in that kind of situation. By the way, our good friend Collin Long doesn't agree with any of this stuff. He doesn't want us talking about it at all. It makes him a little I don't blame him, by the way. He's the Director of Government Affairs over at the OOIDA. OOIDA is on the scene. We're going to wade through the swamp as we always do. One of the original members of the reconstituted Road Gang, Collin Long, joins us this morning. Hey, brother, how you doing?
I'm all right. I was just going to say, watch out for that CBD stuff too, because you can test positive if you use it.
Yeah.
We've had members, unfortunately, get dinged for using CBD lotions that they thought were harmless. So be alert, be aware.
It's a really good thing. It's like somebody once asked me, as a former law enforcement guy myself, somebody once asked me, I've talked about this with friends of mine. I'm like, look, I think it's terrible that we haven't figured out a way, to test people for impairment on the issue as opposed to just, you know what? I feel terrible about it. You know what? You want to work in this profession? Everybody's got to make sacrifices. I don't know if you know this, but you can't take Adderall if you're an NFL player. I mean, you can't. Even if you have ADHD, you can't take Adderall. It's legal. You can't take it. It doesn't make any difference if you need it. Too bad. You want to be in the NFL, put your big boy pants on and kick the football. Collin Long joins us, as he always does. Speaking of football, I am really excited about the FMCSA appointment because this is almost like when a college football program finally gets the right coach. You guys kind of feel the same way that we may have got. This is the guy. This might be the guy, right?
Yeah, I think people are excited, and they should be. I mean, I think he's demonstrated during this long confirmation process that he's going to continue what frankly Secretary Duffy has established, which is a really strong relationship with the trucker community. And I specifically didn't say the trucking community. I said the trucker community. They've really prioritized the needs of truckers and treated truckers like the experts they are. And I think that will continue with Mr. Bars. If anything, that will be enhanced because we finally have someone at the helm of FMCSA whose sole mission is to advance trucking policy. So Secretary Duffy has his hands full. The work he's done over the last few months has been pretty remarkable, but I'm sure he's also very interested in having Mr. Bars in place because it allows him to really run with a lot of the trucking policy.
Well, yeah, and like I said, it also allows him to administrate the entire DOT, which may be, along with the Department of Defense, people don't realize the DOT is a behemoth, and by that it means it's actually got 5 departments inside of it. I mean, the FMCSA could be a department unto itself, the FAA, all of that stuff. It allows Duffy a little breathing room because it means he has a partner, by the way. And this is really kind of, it really is a tipping point here because if, in fact, I'm going to get a little existential with you here, like I sometimes do. One of the things over the last couple of decades, and I'm actually going to pick on our listeners for a second here, is a lot of people have become professional lobbyists without any sort of training in the area. A lot of people have become constitutional attorneys. A lot of people think they know more than doctors. But I'm going to be really fair to them at the same time. When you treat people's areas of expertise as if everybody gets it, then don't be surprised when they start treating everybody else's area of expertise as if they get it. And I am really interested to see if, in fact, we're going to prioritize truckers in this space, if it will allow truckers to finally feel like they have someplace where they can give input. That this may be the beginning of kind of returning people to their areas of expertise. That if you're actually talking to truck drivers, I don't know, let's just say that at one point you were in charge of a large state's, highway patrol, and you decided to put your your patrol members in trucks with people to give them a better sense of what you wanted to do. That might make you actually able to kind of help truckers out, right? Anybody like that we know of?
Yeah. No, I think you've really touched on something, which is why we're excited at OOIDA and why we've been, leaning on the Senate over the last several months to get this confirmation in place, because Mr. Bars has demonstrated he understands the industry from multiple perspectives. I mean, obviously his bread and butter is from enforcement, but don't let that alarm you, folks. I think his appreciation and respect for the profession of trucking doesn't necessarily mean he will look at everything through the lens of enforcement. I think, frankly, he's still one of the generals under Secretary Duffy, and I think Secretary Duffy has made it clear that truckers are priority, and that will continue under Mr. Bars. I think we have good confidence in him. Like I said, we endorsed his nomination months ago when it was announced, and we've been pushing the Senate to get him confirmed so the work at FMCSA can really pick up. And now we're there. He's been confirmed. There was a bit of a false start last week, if I'm being honest. I think some reporting in Washington indicated that he had been confirmed on Friday, and it exploded in the trucking media. And unfortunately, it wasn't the case. But now it is the case. We have official confirmation that he has been confirmed. So,
well, the other thing is
we're happy.
Well, the other thing is, too, about enforcement, and like I said, I always make this really clear. I don't ask questions I pompously know the answer to. I'm kind of curious that Barr is serious about enforcement, but what he's also serious about is enforcement in regards to outside. Okay, the biggest problem a lot of people have had with the FMCSA over the years is it seems like the only people they ever enforced on were the men and women behind the wheel. Anybody sitting behind a desk, anybody on a dock, anybody who was, I don't know, in a four-wheel vehicle driving around them, they seemed to get off pretty easy, and it was always it always felt the one place where we actually were going to exercise the teeth that we had at the FMCSA was only on the driver. For the first time, it seems like we might have somebody here, Collin, who is like, you know what? We're gonna continue to hold drivers to the highest of standards, and everybody else around them. And that really is what seems to be implied here, the idea that it's not just about, enforcement. It's not just about sticking it to drivers. It's about making sure that the world around them is safe as well. Is that a fair assessment of the situation?
Yeah, I think that's well said. I think there is this recognition at DOT and at FMCSA today that I think others have missed over the years, that driving is a difficult occupation. Often it's a hazardous occupation. I mean, we forget that a lot of fatalities on the road are unfortunately professional truck drivers, and I think this administration appreciates that more than we've seen over the years, and I think that has led to them prioritizing the needs of truckers, and that's a welcome departure. I mean, I'm not trying to be overly critical of previous administrations, but this is a bit of fresh air. We haven't really seen truckers prioritized by an administration like we are currently seeing. That frankly, that goes for the first Trump administration too. I mean, we were pleased with Ray Martinez taking a new approach by reaching out and engaging the trucking industry. That continued certainly under the leadership of Pete Buttigieg and the Biden administration, although I think folks didn't necessarily like all the outcomes there. But it's really picked up under the second Trump administration, and I think that's a testament to having the right people in the right places. Secretary Duffy and now Derek Barr's taking over at FMCSA. We're very hopeful, and I think we look forward to working with them. And I think really that's the proper terms to use, working with them rather than working against them and trying to prevent bad policies that have negative outcomes for our members. I think we will actually work together in a collaborative manner that boosts everyone who makes their living behind the wheel.
Well, and the other thing is, too, it's like, it's okay to have counterparties. You and I have talked about that. There are people who have different interests and different bottom lines, and that's the great experiment that is America. You don't get your way. Nobody gets their way. Yeah. But at the same time, after, years of having people who even And by the way, there are counterparties and there are sympathetic counterparties. One of the things about the last couple of people who actually inhabited the seat, the best I could describe them as sympathetic counterparties. Like, look, you're not my priority here. I'm sympathetic to what you're going through, and I can articulate that. That's not the same as what is kind of unfolding here right now, which seems to be a genuine sense of what can we do to make your life easier. Now, I want to point out, as that kind of unfolds, there are going to be people who, as I've always said, when your entitlement program ends, you tend not to be very happy about it. And there are people, both in the trucking space and people who are in the safety space, who might suddenly be like, suddenly having to find themselves in the place that you guys found themselves in. And so people need to be ready for more fights. The better things get for you guys, the more fights that the people on the other side are going to have with you. Correct? Is that fair?
Yeah, and I mean, you talk about safety advocates, and I look at safety advocates today and think, this administration is still focused on safety. It may not be your brand of safety because they're not forcing technology and devices and taking control away from drivers, but they're still focused on safety. I mean, look what they've done with the NAMDAM issue recently with English language proficiency. Yeah, they're little contentious issues, but no one's doubting that they have an impact on safety and that addressing them will advance highway safety for all highway users, if we're being honest. So even safety advocacy groups, I think, need to recognize that this administration is certainly addressing safety concerns. They're just doing it in a different approach, and that's an approach that, frankly, truckers appreciate because, we've been saying over the years, over the decades, this way of working in Washington isn't having the type of outcome you promise when we talk about safety. All the devices, all the mandates, all the requirements, all the restrictions, it's not showing up in the crash data. So let's start to hoist up the feelings, the thoughts, the expertise of truckers as a leading condition for policy, and start to advance some of the policies that they believe will start to improve safety. And I think we're seeing that. And that's, like I said, a little bit of a welcome departure from previous administrations, although I'll give the previous administrations credit for at least turning the ship in that direction. But the second Trump administration, under Secretary Duffy and under Administrator Barr's coming in, has shown that they clearly prioritize truckers and they want to promote safety, but they want to do it in a way that addresses what truckers have been identifying as safety problems on the highway. And we commend that, we applaud that, and we look forward to more of it.
By the way, it takes a long time to turn around an aircraft carrier, and I think you can make the case that starting with Ray Martinez, 8 long years, this is the time. I want people to understand this too. I know that there are people who would like things to happen faster. Trust me, guys, you don't want things to happen any faster sometimes because it means that it can as quickly turn around on you. This has been a long, slow, gradual process that has got us there. You did make a comment about the safety people and new technologies. Let's talk about new technologies, shall we? Can we make a pivot into ELDs here?
Sure, I'm happy to do that.
So tell us what's going on that front with the USDOT.
Yeah, so I'll be upfront about ELDs. The mandate's not going anywhere. Folks need to recognize that. I mean, we've limited its stretch into older trucks. That the Trump administration has said we're not going back in time to require ELDs on older vehicles. That was a victory, but we're not getting rid of the mandate. I think that has become crystal clear, and I think our members are starting to appreciate that. I appreciate their frustration about the ELD mandate. I spent many of my first years here at OOIDA fighting that mandate, trying to delay that mandate, trying to provide exemptions for small businesses. Nothing worked. It was never going to work. We are not going to be able to reverse it, but we are looking for ways to improve the mandate because it's still a pain in the ass. I mean, the amount of devices being decertified by FMCSA over time has been staggering. I think there's like 300 or more that have already been decertified, and oftentimes that's a real challenge for drivers and for small business owners because all of a sudden their devices don't work, and then maybe a month later they're recertified, but you had already gone out and purchased a new one to remain in compliance. And it's a headache, and it's a headache we saw coming. I mean, when this mandate was imposed, we said, you got to certify these devices. There has to be a reliable, trustworthy certification process in place to make sure our members have total confidence that when they purchase a device to use, Even though they don't want to be using it, they know they will remain in compliance. And now I think the mandate has been in place long enough where people are starting to realize, that probably should have been the case back in the day. We probably should have put a verification, certification process in place. So now that there's a highway bill looming, we've taken that argument to Capitol Hill. Louis Pugh, our executive vice president, has testified before the Senate and House about our highway bill priorities. He's talked about the need for a reliable ELD certification process. And now we have some interest. I'm not going to name names because we still have some work to do, but there are lawmakers in both chambers who are interested in helping us get an ELD certification in place. And there's others in our industry who have come out and said, hey, we agree with you on that. What can we do to help? So this is how things get done here in Washington. You quietly assemble a coalition, you quietly develop some champions on Capitol Hill, and then you hope for the best in a highway bill. And that's where we are right now. But I wanted to just talk about this today because we're not going to be able to reverse the ELD mandate. I mean, even my boss, Todd Spencer, when we talk about highway bill, he says, well, what can we do to end the ELD mandate? And I have to say, Todd, I'm sorry.
But that's really kind of great that you point this out, by the way. And Todd is going to be on Trucking with OOIDA today with Scott and Ashley talking about 50 years of OOIDA. But I just want to let people know that the head honcho still hasn't given up the fight. It still hasn't given up. Is there any way we can get that rule change back? I'm just asking again. I don't want to kind of bring this up. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but just to kind of let you know, there are still people in your own shop who are like, really? And you guys have to very calmly explain, there are things we can do and there are things we can't do. But the certification process, this is really important too, because when it comes, the conversation, you and I have talked about this, the interconnectedness of anything. And a lot of the time we have talked about the idea that if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. And the people who kind of impose these mandates, the ones that profit from the imposition of these mandates, have to be held then to a standard, whether it is, ELDT, whether it is how we certify people to be on the road, whether it's how we certify equipment to be used inside of a cab, all of these people, it's like you want to profit from this, then there's a whole bunch of hoops you're going to have to jump through to make sure that it is safe and applicable to the men and women who drive. That's what you guys are fighting for right now, correct?
Totally. Yeah, and it should have been that way from the beginning. And our perspective is, if the federal government is forcing you to do something, they should take the necessary steps to make sure you can remain in compliance without too much difficulty, without any difficulty, if we're being honest. But they didn't do that, and they allowed this ridiculous self-certification where truckers are just supposed to trust providers looking to make money off of selling them devices that track them. And it was just never set up for success. And that's why we think now is the time to go back and admit there was a shortcoming in the initial rule, and it was the lack of a certification process at FMCSA or at USDOT. And we think they're perfectly capable of coming back and doing that. Now, they'll probably have to outsource it, but at least someone will be working on behalf of the folks who are requiring you to use these devices to make sure you can purchase ones that will remain compliant for the duration of your use.
By the way,
it's that difficult.
This is really funny, by the way, and this is kind of a little bit of inside baseball. You'll understand this. Guys, if ever something is going to happen that you don't want to happen, but that is inevitable because of public outcry and because, the cards are stacked against you, then fully embrace it. And make sure they do it absolutely right, because one of two things is going to happen. One, they're going to have to do all the diligence and all the work and actually bust their butts to make it happen as opposed to making a quick buck. Or two, maybe you get really lucky and they're like, wait a minute, we actually do have to set up an under 21 program that actually legitimately trains people with genuine benchmarks to meet. Oh, never mind. We don't want that. That's not what we want. We don't just get 18-year-olds behind the wheel immediately. No, we don't want that.
Yeah.
And I'm being glib to some degree here, Collin, but that's kind of the game too. It's like you kind of have to be able to read the tea leaves and go, you're going to do this whether we get involved or not. So we're going to get involved, and we're going to make sure you do this so right that you might regret having done it from your own end, and it might make the world a better place for the people that you actually claim to be protecting, right?
Yeah, and it reminds me of another area where our members have been clear that they want nothing to do with vehicle miles traveled, a VMT tax.
Yep.
And that's all well and good, but there's a lot of people here in DC who do want to see a transition to VMTs, and our members were telling us, like, don't touch this issue, just stay out of it, don't get involved. And our concern naturally was, if we don't get involved, we get chewed up and spit out. So we have to be involved in this, whether we like VMT or not. And frankly, our interaction with folks talking about VMT and considering VMT, I think has sobered a lot of them up to the realities of trucking and the challenges of imposing a VMT on trucking. But if we weren't at the table talking about that, it probably would have never happened. I think people would have just said, yeah, it should be easy. They've got these ELDs. Let's just tap into those, and we'll start with truckers and move on to passenger vehicle drivers after the guinea pigs tell us how to go about doing that. And I think it's another example of you have to get down into the mud sometimes, because that's your best defense against bad policy. And I think it's not quite the same story with ELDs and VMTs, but a lot of times OOIDA has to be realistic with our members and say, we know you don't like something, but frankly, we have to do the work to prevent even worse outcomes, or to provide just a little bit of relief on some of these things. And that's what we're doing with ELDs. We're not going to be able to reverse the mandate. A lot of people say, well, the Trump administration has really shown an interest in trucker priorities, and one of truckers' biggest priorities is elimination of the ELD mandate. And I have to remind folks, this mandate was imposed, its roots are in the Obama administration, but it went into effect during the Trump administration, and we were trying to delay it at the time, and it didn't happen. So whatever hope you have for the Trump administration coming in and reversing the ELD mandate, I hate to burst your bubble, it's not going to happen. But we can certainly work here in Washington to provide some sort of relief and make the program less burdensome and less costly, because having to purchase different ELDs because they come in and out of compliance is burdensome, and it is costly for a lot of drivers. So we believe it's a really responsible, reasonable approach to improving an otherwise bad situation.
Well, yeah, and when the boys downtown or the boys behind the desk walk in to go talk to the DOT, and the DOT it goes back to where we begin, the idea that the truckers are the experts, and the idea that sitting across the desk from the head of the DOT or anybody at the FMCSA and saying, yeah, this sounds great, let's just run it by the truckers and see what they think. What an interesting place to be. And that really is what it kind of comes down to, is remember that if you walk away and say, we're not even going to talk about that, essentially you are leaving a room where the expert has left the room, and now people who have no expertise are making policy that the experts have had no input in. And that's why it's so important. And on that, I'm not asking a question, I'm making a statement, because if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. And that's as simple as it kind of comes down to. In regards to all of this, what are you guys asking for in regards to the certification process for the ELD? Because we've been through there was a time in there, Collin, for like an entire year. I used to make the joke with Rod all the time. He'd come on the show. We'd talk about a continuing resolution. I'd tell Rod goodbye. We talk about, had Ray Martinez been confirmed? What's the status of the continuing resolution on the highway bill? And then we would come back on the other side, and I would read the names of like 6 to 7 ELDs that were basically pulled, that were no longer considered, certified. What are you guys looking for as far as this is concerned? What is the baseline here to make sure that people actually are buying products that they don't have to turn back in and buy another one?
Well, I think a lot of truckers want cost is always a concern. You want the most affordable products. That doesn't necessarily mean you have the utmost confidence in those products. And I think a certification process gives you the confidence, gives you the assurance that what you're purchasing will allow you to run compliant. And that's just not there right now because of how many of these devices have been decertified. Like I said, I think it's over 300. And we've only had the mandate in place for a few years. So, and frankly, in our office, we get the alerts from FMCSA. Here's who we've decertified this week, and everyone in the office is like, my goodness, how is this still going on this many years into the mandate? And it's because there was never that certification process in place. So we're trying to go back and fix an error of the past to just make sure that our members have the confidence when they're spending money. And it's not just an upfront cost. I mean, a lot of these have reoccurring costs. And when you're spending that much money, especially in difficult economic times where rates are low right now, that you have the confidence that you don't have to worry about it because you know you're going to remain in compliance. And you don't have to be fearful that you're going to have to purchase a new one. I mean, we have members who have purchased multiple ELDs because they keep getting decertified. That shouldn't be happening. The federal government, again, is requiring to use these things. The federal government should be a good partner in ensuring you have the confidence to buy one that will allow you to remain compliant.
We will end today where we began with Derek Barr's confirmation of the FMCSA. Yeah. Based on the comments he's made, anything in your crystal ball that gives us any indication other than working closely and continuing the policies that Secretary Duffy has put into place, was there anything in the tea leaves that he said that kind of gives you a sense of where he might hit the ground running?
I'm not entirely sure. I think as you were talking, I was thinking, well, what are our remaining priorities? We certainly have a lot over at FMCSA, but I think that broker transparency rulemaking is still looming very large for our members, and I think they're hoping for action from the Trump administration on that pending rulemaking, and we certainly are too. I mean, 15,000 comments demonstrates that it's a pretty big issue for our members, a pretty big issue for the trucker community. So if we can offer something up as a priority for Mr. Bars, I think it's certainly that, and I think we will be making our preference to see that rulemaking advance very public as he takes the helm. But I mean, there's a lot to follow through on those 9 initiatives that the Department of Transportation announced a few months ago. I mean, the pilot programs on hours of service are going to be a big deal. The opportunity to have more HOS flexibility is going to be really alluring for drivers, and I think it's great that this Department of Transportation and this FMCSA administration is going to be leading those 2 specific pilot programs, because we're confident they will result in data that we can demonstrate will show that increased flexibility benefits safety and it benefits drivers, and it's something drivers want and something drivers deserve. So I'm going to keep an eye on those 2.
And by the way, you can have pretty good faith, by the way, that the data won't get buried either. That's the other thing on this particular issue, since they tend to kind of lean towards way that you kind of perceive things. If the data comes out in your favor, it won't just kind of get quietly kind of brushed aside. It'll actually be brought to full attention because it's something they're taking a hard look at. Sure. Collin Long, as he is off to do when he can, joins us on Washington Trucking Week. He, of course, is the Director of Government Affairs over at OOIDA. It's good to have you. Got a good weekend planned for yourself, man?
My wife's going on a girls' trip, so I'm just sitting at home watching football, which sounds like a great weekend. So
oh, my God. I got to tell you, I love my mom and dad. I've been staying here setting up the studio for them. My mom said, I know you're going to miss us, but your father and I are leaving for an entire, starting this morning. They actually took off, 83 years old, and they're both going to go hang out on the beach for the next 4 to 5 days. So I'm thrilled. Thank you, Collin. Good to have you, man.
Thank you. I'll talk to you next week.
Yes, sir. We'll be back on the other side. Get busy, man, because LaRue is coming.
Hide your friends.
Hide your friends. Put that microphone in front of your face if you're going to say that.
Oh, no, man. I'm going to yell.
We'll be right back with a little bit of Lindsay Lawler, a whole lot of Lindsay Lawler, and a great life.